I sued my own dad and won $50K because he protected my bully for 7 years. I can still hear the screams, not from the locker rooms where my bully, Cain, tormented me, but the ones I let out years later, collapsing under a betrayal so deep it erased my identity. I spent my whole life believing my father was just a tired, broke man, forced to neglect me. I left my hometown of Crestwood, built a new life in Atherton, and buried the past. But then I came home for Christmas. My father had a surprise, his new girlfriend and her sons. When the blindfold came off, the air vanished. There he was, Cain, my childhood tormentor. But the look on my father's face, that's what broke me. He looked expectant, proud, like he was uniting two friends. That's when the lie that poisoned my teens shattered. He hadn't just neglected me, he had actively protected my bully's family for 7 years, while I suffered. He chose them over me. In that moment, I realized I was done being the victim. I knew exactly what I had to do next, no matter the cost. But I never expected it would end with me waking up in a hospital, or that the final revenge would be worth $50,000. I was constantly tormented throughout secondary school, and my father stood idle because he was courting my tormentor's mother, which I only learned years later after orchestrating my payback. I'm 25, and I've been living away from the city for nearly 7 years now, having moved to Atherton for university at 18 and securing a solid engineering job there, so I rarely visited my hometown, Crestwood. To be honest, I didn't miss the place. My childhood and teen years were far from pleasant, as I was relentlessly bullied for practically everything. My mother had passed when I was 11, and my father raised me alone. We were quite poor, and I was also unusually tall and broad-shouldered, which made me a target for names like the Tower and Ogre. Things spiraled in secondary school when a core group of guys, led by the worst of them, Cain, never missed a chance to humiliate me, which severely eroded my self-esteem. Once they mocked my hand-me-down jacket and tied me in an abandoned storage closet, only for the groundsman to free me. Despite repeated incidents, I could do little because my father, instead of supporting me, told me to suck it up and ignore it, claiming we couldn't afford to stir up trouble and that he was too busy working double shifts to complain to the school. He forbade me from complaining to the staff, worried about the hassle. After school, I left Crestwood for university in Atherton, which was the crucial fresh start I desperately needed, using my mother's university fund and a small stipend from my dad, plus a warehouse job. People there were far more mature and welcoming, and I was relieved to be away from the bad memories of home, only visiting during major holidays. Skip forward to a few days ago. I returned home for Christmas as a full-time engineer with a gift for my father, but he surprised me first by messaging that he was seeing a woman and wanted me to meet her, which genuinely thrilled me after he'd been single for years. He refused to give me her name, saying it was part of the surprise, so I only met his mystery girlfriend after flying home. When I arrived, Dad blindfolded me and walked me to the lounge, where I was excited to meet her and her sons. But as soon as he removed the blindfold, I saw Cain, the same lead bully from school, smiling as if we were old friends, holding his younger brother's hand. I spun around and left, ignoring Dad's calls and locking myself in my old room upstairs, furious when he came after me yelling about how rude I was. I cut him off and asked how long he'd been seeing Mrs. Thorne. His hesitation and eventual admission that it had been almost 7 years confirmed that he had deliberately kept it a secret and that he'd forbidden me from complaining because he was more concerned with protecting Cain and Mrs. Thorne than his own son. I told him to leave me alone, but he tried to argue, claiming he kept it a secret because he knew I missed my mother, as if she were the cause of my fury. I told him he had lied to me throughout my teens and let me suffer the bullying despite having the power to stop it, choosing to endure the pain instead of telling his girlfriend to discipline her son. I swore I'd never forgive him. He tried to justify his actions, saying their relationship was new back then and he didn't want to ruin it over her son's childish behavior, but I couldn't accept it. He eventually left, saying he'd serve dinner at 9, but I was horrified and furious that my father had chosen to be a boyfriend over being my dad, betraying his primary duty to protect me. The longer I sat and stewed, recalling the countless nights I'd cried myself to sleep in that very bed, the more the unfairness consumed me. So I did something rash and stupid. I called the police and reported my father.
I wanted to sue my father, but in my state, I ended up calling the police to press charges. They showed up after a while, and I struggled to explain everything while my father and Mrs. Thorne insisted I was just being hysterical. The officers realized I was having some kind of breakdown, explained I'd be better off with a family lawyer, and then left. I was still completely worked up and felt a panic attack brewing, but my father freaked out on me, calling me an ungrateful jerk and saying that calling the police on him was an unforgivable act, which Mrs. Thorne agreed was going too far. I wanted to fight back, but my chest was tight and I was dizzy and I think I must have passed out, because the next thing I knew, I was waking up in the emergency room. Apparently, I had collapsed due to lack of food and water, which, combined with the extreme stress, had led to my collapse, making sense since I hadn't eaten or drunk anything at my father's house. The nurse told me I'd been unconscious for about an hour, and my father was waiting. I felt a flicker of guilt, but it vanished when he walked in and told me he firmly stood by his choice, claiming there was nothing wrong with choosing his own relationship over his son, and minimizing the bullying by saying Cain meant no harm, and that it was all in good fun. I was speechless that he was defending his actions and my bully while I was in a hospital bed, then expecting me to apologize for calling the law on him. So I told him to get the hell out of the room. It's been a few days and I packed my belongings and moved to a hotel suite, with my father making no attempt to stop me. Now I'm seriously considering suing him for the emotional distress and for deliberately denying me a safe environment, despite the fact that it will effectively destroy our relationship and I have no other family. But this betrayal is too monumental to forgive. Update 1. I learned more about my father and Mrs. Thorne after telling my friend Owen, who admitted that everyone in our neighborhood actually knew what was going on, but the rumors never reached me because I was so quiet and isolated. Owen never told me because he didn't trust the rumors, and the bullies never brought it up because it involved Cain's mother. Apparently, Mrs. Thorne had been having an affair with my father for several years, practically since my freshman year, with people seeing them holding hands near their workplaces. My dad was a shipyard supervisor and she was a finance manager at the same company, where their affair started. I was disgusted that so many people knew the truth but not me, and I cursed myself for being so introverted, realizing that information would have saved me so much pain. I'm obviously sickened that my father was with a married woman, yet he had the gall to lecture me about family loyalty, trying to make me realize I messed up by calling the police, making his hypocrisy staggering. Cain's dad, Mr. Thorne, had dumped his wife a few months ago, and he and his younger son had been living with Mrs. Thorne since then, while Cain moved out of Crestwood around the same time I left, so he probably wasn't aware of this setup either. This means my father's claim that Mrs. Thorne was his new girlfriend was a total fabrication, trying to fool me into thinking this was only a few months old, not 8 long years, and he hasn't even called to apologize. Update 2. I did it. I'm suing my father for emotional distress. I convinced my bosses to let me work remotely during the lawsuit, and I'm staying with my friend Owen, who was happy to have me back and immediately offered his spare room. My father was notified of the lawsuit a few hours ago and is furious, calling and demanding to know what I thought I was doing. I told him exactly what I was doing, getting revenge for him turning his back on me when I needed him most, so now he'll have to pay up to make amends. His excuse back then was that we were poor and he was too busy working to waste time at my school over a bunch of kids. And now that I know that was all a lie, I think I'm entitled to compensation, not to mention that the money will be crucial for the therapy I'll definitely need. He called me ungrateful and said what he did was fine and I was going to lose, but he sounded doubtful and I don't think he's convinced of my failure either. Regardless of the outcome, I'll have the satisfaction of knowing I fought back and didn't just let it go, as he told me to my entire life. And I'm hoping old classmates and teachers will support me this time, so I'm reaching out to them. What I was doing, getting revenge for to pay up to make amends. Is he working to waste time? I think I'm entitled to compensate. The money will be crucial for the therapy I'll
That's the end of my story. $50,000 later, I finally have the justice and the closure I fought for. It cost me the last relationship I had with my father, but the peace of mind is priceless. Now, I need to know, was I right to sue my only remaining family for the emotional damage he inflicted? What would you have done? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below, and please tell me where in the world you are watching from. If this story resonated with you, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.